Okay, everyone, we are going to go ahead and get started. I want to thank you so much for joining our Windermere workshop. This is called Property Tax Notification 101. This is how to respond when you receive your property tax notice coming up here in just the next couple weeks in the early part of May. And I want to introduce myself for those of you that may not know me. My name's Eric Thompson. I'll be your host through this webinar. I am president of Windermere Real Estate here in Colorado. And it's just my pleasure to offer this to you. And I'll tell you what, you are in exactly the right place. If you're a property owner in Colorado, if you care about how much you pay in property taxes, and maybe you're looking for ways to not pay as much in property taxes, maybe also you just want to understand how this whole process works, and it may turn out that you want to protest your property's value, you are in exactly the right spot. And again, just want to say thank you so much to all of our friends and clients who are joining us either live or listening to the recording. What I'd like to do first, if it's all right with you, just to make sure I'm coming through loud and clear to all of you who are listening in live, I'd like you to just type me a note to let me know that you can hear me. And I thought it'd be fun because we have three of our Denver sports teams, three of our Colorado sports teams who are active right now. So we have the Rockies that are just getting going in their season, albeit that they're off to a slow start, but they're getting going. We have the Nuggets in the playoffs. We have the Avalanche in the playoffs. Who are you a fan of? So just type in Rockies, Nuggets, or Avalanche. If you could just type that in for me right there on the GoToWebinar tool, I will be able to make sure that you can hear me loud and clear, and I can see the notes rolling in. So that's really fun. It looks like there's a good mix of different fans, right? So we have some Rockies fans, some Nuggets fans, and also some Avalanche fans. So that is fantastic. Okay, so let's dive right in here. So again, this is all about your property tax notification 101. This is how to respond when you receive your notice that's coming up here in the next couple weeks. You're going to get a postcard in the mail. And based on our past experience in helping our clients with this, what we know is that sometimes it can feel a little bit like this. Okay, so it can feel like this when you get that postcard in the mail. You know, taxes in general are no fun to pay. We certainly get a lot for paying taxes for sure. There's a lot of value that's created, but you know, sometimes it can feel like a punch in the face when we have to pay taxes. And sometimes, especially given what property values have been doing, property taxes and how much they've gone up can feel like a punch in the face. All right, so we want to help you with this. So the deal is, in the next few weeks, you are going to receive a property tax notification in the mail. It's going to come via a postcard. It'll look something like this. And the reality is, based on our past experience, you're going to have questions. So these postcards always generate lots of questions among our clients. And the reality is, the deal is, we can help you. Okay, so we can help you with those questions. We're going to go through those questions that you're likely to have today so that you are super clear. By the way, speaking of questions, you are welcome to type in questions as we go along, and I will be sure to save some time at the very end to take even more questions. So if you have questions as we go along, just feel free to type them in, just like you did when you typed in Nuggets, Rockies, or Avalanche. That's how you do it, all right? So why are we talking about this right now? The reason why we're talking about this right now is that this is an odd year. So the counties value property in Colorado every other year. They do it every 2 years, and the way it goes is they do it on odd years. 2019 is obviously an odd year. That's why we're doing it this year. So in this webinar together, we're going to focus on three main things as we go through this webinar. By the way, this will be no more than an hour. This will be an hour max. And what we're going to cover during that hour is the valuation process. So you understand exactly how it works. You know how the county values your property. You're going to really get that and understand that. You're going to understand what it means to you. So not only will you understand the process, you're also going to really get what it means to you and what it means to your taxes. And you will understand how to protest the value if that's something that you do want to do based on whatever the county comes up with as your value. We thought it would be fun to start off with some fun facts about property taxes, just to kind of warm this up and also to put all this into context. How about some fun facts as it relates to property taxes? And let's start nationwide, all right? How about some facts when it comes to property taxes in the United States? Did you know that close to $305 billion is collected in property tax all across the US? That is a heck of a lot of money, and certainly there's a heck of a lot of value that's created because of that. But just over $300 billion is collected in property tax all across the U.S. How that turns out when you do the math and when you do the calculation, that's just under $3,500 per home on average. So if you look at all the real property and the households in the U.S., that turns out to be just under $3,500 per home in the United States. And how that turns out to be for property taxes, that's an effective rate of 1.16%. So you're going to see this is not exactly how property taxes are calculated, but it is interesting to see just as an effective rate what it turns out to be. So effectively, the average across the U.S. is a little over 1.1%. So 1.16% is the effective rate. The reason why I show you this is to put it into context as to what happens in Colorado. So let's roll into some fun facts as it relates to Colorado property tax. So here's the thing in Colorado as it relates to property tax, we are the third lowest rate in the United States, all right? So when you calculate the effective rate, which I'll show you here in a moment, when you calculate the effective rate in Colorado, it turns out we're the third lowest. I don't mean that we're the third lowest when you look at just the pure dollars that are collected. And I say that because Colorado tends to have higher property values compared to the average across the US. So we don't rank third lowest when it relates to just pure dollars that are collected, but we are the third lowest when it comes to the effective rate. So the effective rate in Colorado is just over 0.5%. So just on average, if you were to look at property values in Colorado and then how much tax is levied against those properties, the effective rate is just over 0.5%. It's interesting when we work with clients who are moving here from out of state, they tend to be very pleasantly surprised at how low our taxes are relative to other places in the country, relative to other places that they're moving from. You may be curious to know, well, who's the highest? Which state has the highest effective rate? The highest is New Jersey. The lowest is Hawaii, the way it turns out. So folks moving here from New Jersey are used to much, much higher property taxes compared to what they have here. And really, most people moving from most places across the country, when they come to Colorado, they're very pleasantly surprised at how low our property taxes are. All right. So our average property tax bill across the state of Colorado is $2,241. It's the average bill. Put that up against the slide I showed you before. Across the U.S., the average is just under $3,500. So across the U.S., the average is $3,500. The average bill here in Colorado is $2,241. So that's great news for all of us as Colorado property owners. Relative to other parts of the country, we have low property taxes. That is all great news. Okay, so that's just kind of an overview, kind of to put this into context. All right. So now let's go into some things that you need to know. All right. So here's some things that you need to know about property taxes. Alrighty. So what you need to know first is that property taxes, they pay for things like schools and police service and fire services and your library, your local roads and other local services. All right. All of the revenue stays within the county. So all the revenue that's collected from property tax stays within the county. So property taxes don't fund any state level services. Okay, so the state is funded in different ways. A big way, of course, is through income tax, but property tax revenue stays within the county and it funds all those local services. And I gave you some examples there in the first bullet. Alrighty. So this is just the simple formula, kind of the simple way that property taxes are calculated, just so you are clear about kind of how this works. How they're calculated is this. So they take the value, when I say they, I mean the county. So they take the value times the assessment rate, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that here in a moment. And then when you do that calculation, you come up with the assessed value. So the value, that first part of this calculation, when I say value, that's the value that the county determines. So in this scenario, they are determining your value. They multiply it by an assessment rate, which in the state of Colorado is 7.2%. And there's some debate going on right now at the legislature that that may change a little bit, but right now it's 7.2%. And then you end up with the assessed value. So then you take the assessed value multiplied by something called the mill levy, and then you end up with your levied tax. All right. So this is not super straightforward in terms of how your tax is calculated. Again, it's not just simply value times a tax rate equals your levied tax. There's an extra step that's built in here. So again, they take the value that they determine multiplied by 7.2%. You come up with what they call the assessed value, and then you take that assessed value times the mill levy equals your levied tax. So what's the mill levy? The mill levy includes all of the levies that each individual district charges in your specific location. So for instance, there are school districts, there are fire districts, there are library districts, right? All of those things add up to the mill levy. Each one of those has a specific mill that they levy against the property. Take those collectively, add all those up, then you come up with the mill levy multiplied against the assessed value equals your levied tax. All right. I know this is a little convoluted, not exactly straightforward. Trying to make this as simple as possible. How about an example? And by the way, of course, this whole webinar is a whole lot about this first thing here, the value. We're going to talk more about this value that they come up with and how to potentially protest that value if you want. But first, an example. So here's the example that we'll use just to make this simple and straightforward to help you really understand this. So let's pretend there's a property that they determine. When I say they, I mean the county. The county determines is worth $500,000. So they determine it's worth $500,000. Again, the assessment rate in the state of Colorado is 7.2%. So when you take 500,000 times 7.2%, that equals 36,000. So 36,000 in this example is the assessed value. Then in this example, you take that 36,000 multiplied against 76 mills, then you come up with $2,736. For what it's worth, you may be curious to know, in this example, the effective rate is 0.55%, so just over 0.5%. So what might be included in these 76 mills right here? Well, it'd be all those examples that I mentioned before. So there'd be a school district mill and a fire district mill and maybe a sewer district and a library district. You know, all those districts will have their own individual mill that they levy against the property. In this example, if you were to add all those things up, you will come up with 76 mills. What's really great about the state of Colorado and each individual county, and I did a lot of research ahead of this, is that each county has really terrific websites where you can get a lot of clarity about what's happening with your individual property. So you can not only see the total amount of taxes that you pay for your property, but you can see exactly where that money goes district by district. So you can see how much goes to the school district, to the fire district, the library district, etc. So you can get a whole lot of clarity if you were just simply to go onto your county's website, search your property, look at how much is being charged on your property for each individual district. You can see each individual district's mill levy. All right. So that's how that works. All right. So again, it's just the value that they determine multiplied by 7.2%, you come up with the assessed valuation for your property. Take that assessed value against the mill levy, and then you end up with the actual tax amount that is assessed. All right, you guys got that? Sounding good so far? Hopefully that's straightforward. So now let's talk a little bit about your property's value, okay? So your property's value, as I mentioned before, it's reassessed every 2 years. So this is the first part of that formula. So when we take the value times 7.2%, again, it's the value that the county determines. They take a fresh look at that every 2 years, not every single year, but just every 2 years. So they're going to do it in 2019. We're going to show you how they do it here in a moment. By statute, so by state statute, your county uses a market approach to value. So what that means is there are some approaches that they don't use. If we were assessors, so let's say that assessors or appraisers, let's say that you and I were both in the appraisal business, we would know that there are several different ways to appraise a property. One is the market approach. Another approach is the income approach, which means that you look at how much income a property may generate. Then you run a formula to look at what that property is worth. Another approach would be the cost approach, where you look at, well, how much would it cost to replace that property? And then that's what that property is worth. Well, you know what? Those methods are not used for this purpose. What is used is the market approach. And again, that's by state statute. Your county uses a market approach to value. All that means is that the value that they come up with is based on comparable sales. All right. So by statute, that's all that your county can look at. Your county simply looks at comparable sales to come up with the value of your property. So they look at properties that have sold recently, and I'll show you exactly how that works here in a moment, but they look at properties that have sold recently to determine what the value of your property is. So the thing is, and the reality is about this approach, because they're forced to use a market approach to value, is that because there are so many properties that they are valuing within your county, what that means is, what the reality is that they cannot go individually, property by property by property, to do an individual assessment, an individual appraisal of your property. That's impossible. It would be an impossible workload for the folks at the county to do that. So what it means, the reality is, they have to use a blanket approach. They have to create algorithms. They have to create models that they can drop onto the county as a whole, as kind of a blanket, to help come up with your property's value. All right, that's the best they can do, and they are doing the best that they can do, and that's the approach that they have to take. Again, it would be impossible for them to go property by property, one by one. It would just not work out at all. Okay, it'd be way too much work. So what that means is it can only be so good. So like by definition, it can only be so good. And so there can be a lot of variations in this. So we tend to uncover some flaws. Again, no fault of the county. They're doing the best they can. They're dealing with the cards that they were dealt. It can only be so good. But I just want to show you an example of this. So the example is based on a neighborhood. It happens to be in northern Colorado, a neighborhood that we helped with 2 years ago. We helped a lot of property owners within this neighborhood when they got their new assessed value. So what you're looking at is the analysis that we did for them. I know there's a lot of numbers going on here on the screen. I will walk you through here what's happening, but down that far left column would be the addresses. So these are all individual properties. So then the next column shows you the market value in 2016, and then the next column shows you the county's new valuation. So again, this was 2 years ago. The last time around, the counties did this new valuation. That second column of numbers, this one right here, was their new valuation for that individual property. And what gets really interesting is to look at the final column here. So this column here in the far right shows you the change between the last time they did the valuation and then the new time they did the valuation, and look at how all over the board this is. So we have this property up here that, according to them, went up $200,000. And then we have this property down here that, according to them, went down $74,000. So it's just totally all over the board. Sometimes on the surface, it can appear that there's no rhyme or reason to this. Now, there is some logic behind this, and when you dig in, the county will have their logic. But this is just to show you that there can be lots of variation in this, and we can uncover some opportunities to go back to the county to make an argument that, you know what, this new valuation that you put on my property, it's just not accurate, and this is why. And for instance, look at how all over the board these valuations are that you did yourself. So this is just an example of the kind of thing that we can help with when you do get that new valuation. Okay, so I'm just going to pause here for a moment because we've had a couple questions come in, a couple really good questions. So I'm just going to pause here for a moment and read these. So one question is, do you know how each district determines where their monies come from? In other words, the school district gets monies from property tax, sales tax, etc. You know what? That's all done. It's all done locally at the local county level. Oftentimes things are put to a vote. So, for instance, I live in Fort Collins, and there was a recent vote to approve a new bond to go build some new schools for our school district. So, oftentimes you're seeing these things show up as ballot measures. Your county commissioners are making these kinds of decisions. So that's a little bit about how those are calculated. Another question came in: how do metro rates in some communities affect taxes? And how do metro rates? I would ask maybe if that person could send in just a little more detail about that question. I'd be happy to answer that. I'm not exactly sure what you're after there, and maybe that part I went through about how property taxes are calculated exactly can help you with that. But feel free to go ahead and type in a follow-up to that, and I'd be happy to help you out. All right. So again, this what you're seeing here on the screen, just an example in one neighborhood, how these property valuations can really vary. All right. So when it comes to the comparable sales that the county uses, here's what you need to know. By statute, they use 2 years worth of data. All right, so they can use a window of 2 years worth of comparable sales. They look at the data for those comparable sales. And so for this new valuation that you're going to see here on your postcard in the next couple weeks, they look at properties that sold between July 1st, 2016 and June the 30th, 2018. All right. So those are just kind of the rules. That's the window that they're given. So they're looking at properties that sold within that window. All right. So you just need to know that. So if we were to look at this on a calendar, what you see is that they go back to July 1st, 2016, and it's the 24 months that start July 1st, 2016, goes through the rest of 2016 all the way through 2017, and then through half of 2018. So through the end of June 2018, it turns out that the last working day of June was a Friday. So through Friday, June the 29th, 2018, they look at all the sales that occurred in that window. That's what they're kind of allowed to look at, and that's what they base your value on. All right. So the protest process looks like this. If you disagree with the assessed value, you can protest the valuation that's on your postcard. So when you get your postcard in the next couple weeks, it will show you the new assessed value. If you disagree with that value, you are allowed to protest. You can protest either online or in writing. Each individual county has really good instructions on how to protest the value. They pretty much for the most part have the ability for you to make that protest online. You just fill out an online form. You have to submit, in addition, you have to submit some information that I'll talk about here in a second. So you can do it online or you can do it in writing. You can put together a printed packet and then mail it into your county. That is your choice in terms of how you protest if you do decide to protest. The big thing you need to know is that there's a deadline to protest, and that deadline is June the 1st. So if we were to look at all this on a calendar, it would lay out like this. During that first week of May, so in those first few days of May, that's when you're likely to receive that notice in the mail. So again, that's going to be the postcard from your county that's going to say, hey, here is our new valuation for your property. You're going to see that hit your mailbox during that first week of May. Then you have until this red box here, you have until June the 1st to have your protest sent in. So if you're mailing it, if you're going to use physical mail, if you're going to do the printed packet, if you're going to mail it to them, it must be postmarked by June the 1st. If you're going to do it online, you need to do that by this Friday, which is the very end of May. So this is the deadline to protest, and then they have a deadline to respond back to you. So if you do protest, they have to respond back to you by June the 28th, the last working day of June, with what's called the notice of determination. And that's when they say to you either yay or nay, yes, we agree with your argument, with your protest, or no, we don't. By the way, if you get a notice of a determination that you don't like, if it turns out that they disagreed with your protest, there is another step there too, where you can go then in front of a panel to make your argument. There is a whole nother next step if you do want to keep going with this protest process. However, you need to know you need to get the protest in by June the 1st, and then they need to respond to you by June the 28th, the last working day of June. All right? Sounding good so far? Making sense so far? So the deal is when you get that postcard, the big question that you're going to have, again, this is based on our past experience, the big question you're going to have is, so is that what my home is really worth? And we see this on both sides. So we see people that say, wow, I had no idea that my home is really worth that much. It increased way more than I ever would have thought. And we also see the other side too. We see the other side that said, I thought that my property would actually be worth more money. I'm kind of surprised that it's not higher. So we see questions that go both ways, that kind of go on both sides of this. So this is a question that's naturally prompted by this postcard, and the good news is that we can help you out. All right, so we are experts at valuing property. Obviously, that's what we do. We do it like all the time. We help people all up and down the Front Range with their property's value, whether they're thinking about selling or not. We're helping people with market valuations all the time. And our market valuation takes a very detailed and specific look at what the market would bear for your property, what a buyer would be willing to pay for your property, again, which is different than the algorithm, different than the model that your county may be dropping onto your market to come up with their valuation. So if you do want to protest your property's value, all right, so if you get that postcard in the mail and you disagree, you say, whoa, time out, this value went up way too much compared to what I think my property is really worth. I don't want to pay too much in property taxes. What you're going to need, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to need comparable sales and you're going to need a market analysis. So this is exactly what we can help you with. We're happy to help you pull up comparable sales. We're happy to help you with the market analysis. Again, that's what we do all the time. We get a lot of practice at this. We're really, really good at this. You should also know that what we can do for you, it's way different than Zillow and much different than the Zillow Zestimate that you might be familiar with. So the way the Zillow Zestimate works is not unlike what the county does. So the Zillow Zestimate, it uses an algorithm, it uses a formula that they can drop onto a whole market at one time. And it's just not possible for the Zillow Zestimate to take a very detailed, very specific look at your individual property and all the specific nuances of your property, and maybe its view and its orientation and its location and its finishes and all those things that our expert eyes can see that can make our valuation more accurate than a Zillow Zestimate. So Zillow's estimates, we always say, is it's a great place to start. It can kind of get you in the ballpark. We can take it the next step to another level and get way more detailed. So we're happy to help again with the valuation. We can help you pull those comparable sales. We can help you with the market analysis if you choose to protest your property. So again, when you get that postcard in the mail, you know what? It may feel just like this. It may feel like a punch in the face. Let's pretend that the value went up way more than you ever thought, and you're saying, oh my gosh, look at the property taxes I now need to pay. That can feel like a punch in the face. We're happy to help you out with that. So what to do next is you want to watch out for your notice of valuation in the mail. It's going to show up by postcard here in the next couple weeks. If you have questions about the value, just give us a call. So just reach out to us, reach out to your Windermere Realtor, even for just like an initial reaction, kind of our initial take on the county's value. We're happy to give some initial input on that. And then if you want us to do that detailed research on comparable sales and help you with the market analysis, we are more than happy to help with that, all right? So that's what you're going to need if you do choose to take it the next step and go protest your value. That's what you'll need. You'll need the comparable sales. You'll need the market analysis. Our Windermere Realtors are here to help you out, all right? So now it's time to take some questions. So as we've gone on here, you may have some questions about how all this works and kind of what to do, and you may have more detailed questions about valuation process and that kind of thing. And I'm happy to commit some time here to get those questions answered. And we also love questions because it helps other people learn as well. So other people may have the same question. So we strongly encourage your questions to come in. And the way to do that, again, is just type it in. So all of you who are listening in live, just type in your question. I'll see it right here on my dashboard. and I would be more than happy to help you out. I'm just going to pause here for a moment, take a drink of water, and see if a question comes in. Oh, so here's a great question that came in. The question was about special metro taxing districts. All right. So these are becoming more and more prevalent, special taxing districts. We're seeing these come up more and more. They're very common in new developments nowadays. And it's become a really great vehicle for developers to get some of the cost of infrastructure covered. So things like road and sewer and water, it's a way for them to get some of those costs covered up front. So it makes it easier for them to get a project going and allows them to hit a certain price point in the properties that they offer for sale. So the simple way to think about a special metro district is that it's just another district that would live on the list of all the districts that are levying taxes against your property. So again, a district that levies taxes against pretty much everyone's property in Colorado would be a school district. So you're going to see a school district levy a tax against your property. You'll see a fire district levy a tax. You'll see a library district levy a tax. And so some specific communities have special metro districts. So that may be for one specific neighborhood. They happen to have a special district. And oftentimes we're seeing these special metro districts become in place of homeowners associations. So we're seeing recently that they are starting to take on a similar role as an HOA. And so oftentimes you're paying this special tax to this special district instead of paying HOA dues because they can do things like take care of common areas and even play the role of enforcing covenants. So again, you're seeing these special districts become more and more prevalent. And you know what? The reality is, you're for a new home product, you're either going to pay for that infrastructure like roads and sewer and water. You're either going to pay for it in the price of the home, or it'll be paid for within the district. So think of the special district. It's just another district that's levying tax on the list of all the districts that would levy tax. All right. So hopefully I answered that question about special taxing district. Um, let's see here. Um, here's a question. My knowledge, do metro districts ever sunset? It's interesting. We just had a couple of attorneys come to our sales meeting here recently who specialize in metro districts, and we asked them that question. And again, the question, to our knowledge, do metro districts ever sunset? And they said no. They've never seen a metro district sunset because their services tend to live on. And they can again take on a role more typically played by an HOA. So they said in their experience they've never seen a metro district sunset. Great question. Um, let's see. So I'm just going to give it another moment here to see if another question comes in. They've been great questions so far. Boy, we had a great turnout here for everyone listening in live, and I know a lot of you will be listening into the recording. By the way, if you're listening to the recording, if you have questions, of course, just reach out to your Windermere realtor. They'd be happy to help you. Um, and let's see. So a question came in: does the assessment rate ever change? It could only, and I'm guessing that question relates to special districts. Again, does the assessment rate ever change? It can only change by vote. So just like a school district's tax or a fire district's tax, those things can only change by vote. So the people who live within the community where that special district does exist, they would have to vote for a change in that tax rate. Is kind of how that works. Great. Let's see. I had a couple just thank you notes come in, so that's really nice. You are welcome. You're all more than welcome. Again, if you are listening to the recording or if you have questions after this, just feel free to reach out to your Windermere Realtor. They are experts with all things like this, and of course are experts in valuing property. They'd be more than happy to help. If by chance you got to this webinar not directly through a Windermere Realtor, maybe if you haven't been introduced to a Windermere Realtor yet, an email you can use is just colorado@windermere.com. Just send your question into there and we'll get you in the hands of an expert who can help you out. But otherwise, again, be sure to just reach directly out to your Windermere Realtor. They can help you right through this process. So it looks like that's all we have for questions. Those are really good questions. I appreciate it. And boy, again, I just appreciate so much all of you tuning in to engage with this webinar. I know we're going to have a bunch of people also listening to the recording. We appreciate it. We appreciate all your support. We appreciate the relationship that we have with all of our wonderful clients. It means the world to us. And I'll finish with this. Thank you so much for your engagement, and look forward to catching you on the next Windermere workshop. Just watch for the notification for the next thing like this that we'll do. In the meantime, have a terrific day. Take care. Bye.